well, joining us to discuss some of these matters, Akande, host of Inside Sources and former presidential aide. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning.
About the elections, the congresses being held. I mean, naturally, because people are already used to the APC, so when their congresses are going on, people think, yeah, that's normal. But when a group of opposition comes together to see how they go put up a strong front to challenge them properly, many expect some sort of action. But as you heard Chief Mamadou, they say, don't panic on our behalf. We've got this. We have got this. So what do you think of what you've seen?
Yeah, I think that it's important for all of us generally to agree on a very central and basic point in a democracy. We must be concerned and concerned honestly about a viable opposition. So to that extent, you know, all of us, we must side with the perspective that tries to enlarge the democratic space. Now, I don't agree with those who are afraid that Nigeria may become a one-party state, because, you know, if you look at, you know, the divergences, you know, it's not going to converge and produce a one-party state. Well, having said that, I'm also concerned about, you know, ensuring that the opposition does have a space to breathe, and that we have a process that is seen to be very fair. That is where I think we need to pay a little bit more attention to, especially, you know, what INEC says and what INEC does. Now, if you remember in the last cycle, you know, Professor Yakub, the immediate past chairman of INEC, he did a good job in trying to raise the hopes and build the trust. The problem was that when it came to the time to deliver, he was completely, you know, absent.
So he did a good job dashing the hopes too.
So, yeah, exactly. Not a good way to put it. But the problem that we have now is that there is no... I mean, I have not seen the new chairman of INEC, Professor Joash Amupiton, speaking as candidly as he ought to. He's behaving as though, you know, his hands are tied, and he's trying to be careful, you know, what to say or what not to say. And, you know, maybe it's because he's new, you can give that leverage. But it's important to let him know that INEC must be on the side of the Nigerian people as an umpire, okay? So this issue of him saying that, oh, I cannot guarantee 100% success of the election, that doesn't have to be spoken. Nobody is expecting 100% perfection. But when the chairman of INEC speaks like that, it sends the wrong signal, especially when we are just coming out from a very controversial discussion of the Electoral Act and the issue of electronic transmission and the proviso that was brought in at the last minute. And then you now have the chairman of INEC say, well, you know, he should have just said, which you also said, that look, I will give you the best election and stop there. Nobody is going to expect you to be perfect. So I am concerned that if the opposition are raising hell, too much hell about the electoral process, it's important we pay attention to that so that we don't create a legitimacy crisis for the outcome of the election.
So when they came up and spoke about the provisions of the Electoral Act that was amended at the time they did,
yeah.
And the reaction for a lot of people was, oh, wait a minute, there was that window of opportunity to have made that point very cogently. Not that it wasn't cogent when it was made subsequently, but they thought that timing determined a lot. Because some of the narrative was, well, the act was amended. Yeah. Who says it cannot be amended again? And then we know that if you are in the minority, it has to take some doing for you to get it amended if you're not in the majority.
Right.
So many then thought, did they just say that just for the sake of occupying the space, so to speak? Because if it was about getting or making an impact, That window, when that ground was there, where lots of Nigerians were really on that matter, they should have just keyed in, but maybe they thought differently.
Yeah, I mean, and that has a potential to create the unnecessary kind of legitimacy crisis for the process. Look, honestly and quite frankly, the Senate should have, and the National Assembly should have just said that, look, there will be electronic transmission of result, or there shall be, and full stop. Stop there. The very idea of this proviso that says that in case that fails, all of those things don't have to be. You don't have to say it. If it fails, it fails. But to insert it, to say that, look, if technology fails or when that can't happen, then you can do this, you create an opportunity. You know, and I think it was Sister Obi Ezekwe that made a very important point, I think, on Sunday, when she said that, look, when she was doing due process, looking at the way contracts are awarded in the federal government, she found out that a significant portion of contracts that were issued were used, they used the exception, okay? The exception rule.
Not the rule.
Yeah, exactly. So that is the danger that exists in a country where we are still dealing with systemic corruption. If you create an opportunity for exception, that is what is going to become the rule. And that is why it wasn't wise for the National Assembly to have, brought in that proviso at the last minute, which goes against the grain of the consensus that was built up to that moment. It has done a damage to public perception. It has done a damage to the issue of trust, and it seems that the APC-controlled National Assembly is desperate to insert that portion because they have an agenda to use it to frustrate electronic transmission. That is the perception, and we cannot go away from it.
Speaking of which, I think during Buhari's government,
right,
some of these persons who were in ADC were in government at the time, and this same matter came up, electronic transfer of results, but they shut it down. It didn't go through.
They shut it down.
So
and
why are they asking for it now? What happened?
And that is part of the narrative that you get from the people that are in government and say, hey, but we know the roles that some of you guys played under Buhari, asking Buhari not to sign the stuff until after the 2019 election.
Yeah.
And, I guess the facts are there about that. My own concern now is that what is good for Nigeria? What is good for Nigeria in spite of the fact that our politicians, are essentially in a self-serving game, whether it's in APC or it's in ADC or PDP or any of the parties for that matter, even LP. Our politicians are overly, driven by selfish interest, overly, and that has to change. So what we want is to do the right thing, even if the people who are asking for it now didn't do it when they had the opportunity. Okay, we note that, but we still need to do the right thing.
Let's switch to El-Rufai's matter.
Right.
Do you think he played into government's hand by saying what he said? Because now, the way the things are going, nobody knows how the pendulum is going to eventually swing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing I'd like to say about the El-Rufai matter is that based on what we are hearing, I think they need to bring the matter into the open. I mean, you cannot try El-Rufai, in secret. They said that investigation is still going on, and the guy has been there for weeks and all of that. I understand that they even said that he was sick at some point, but I think that has been debunked. Yeah. I understand that even his doctor has seen him and he's fine. But it's important to move this thing to the open. Let us know what are the other charges. We know the charges about the hacking, and we know the charges yesterday about what happened at the airport. Yeah. Let's know what are the charges about corruption. I mean, let's bring it in the open.
For ICPC to weigh in.
Yeah, ICPC should tell us what are the charges they are trying to. I mean, they are investigating about him. EFCC should tell us what are the charges that are against him, because we are told that the man has refused to respond to their investigation. If he has refused to respond to their investigation, which is his right, bring the matter to court if you have the evidence. Let's stop this impression of we are trying to punish El-Rufai. I, for one, think that I think that El-Rufai deserves to have his day in court, and I also wish that some of the rights violations that took place under him as governor is also brought to the table. What happened to Daddy Yatta? You know, what happened to the traditional ruler in Kajuru, and several other violations that happened under his watch in Kaduna State, which we are aware. Those things he should also answer for them. But for God's sake, do this thing properly, do it in the open as is required, and stop this impression that we just want to punish El-Rufai, whatever it is.
Ayo.
Saying, Mr. Akande, that there is no politics at play in this matter, particularly of Mr. El-Rufai.
Well, you know, I can't say that there is no politics at play, because he is a politician, and some of his opponents and people that he's opposing, people that he's attacking actively, they're also politicians who happen to control the levers of power. So we cannot remove politics from it. But what must happen is that, look, I think everybody in this country has a fair understanding that Rufai has questions to answer. The former governor El-Rufai, he does have questions to answer about corruption allegations. We have the Kaduna State government, House of Assembly, have a very huge report. You know, we saw what he said on TV, you know, what happened at the airport. There are several instances. And like I said, there are also violations of people's fundamental rights that were, that allegedly took place when he was governor. So there's no doubt about the fact that El-Rufai needs to be, to be investigated. My point is that let's just do it properly and do it fairly.
But I think the reason I'm asking that question is because you also know that his party, the ADC, are already making comments. In fact, I think I remember the national chairman of the party saying if anything happens, or maybe even former Vice President Atiku Abubakar saying that whatever happens to Mr. El-Rufai, the federal government should be held responsible. That's why I'm asking, are there any political colorations to the accusations making the rounds now that could indict the federal government, despite the substantive issues you have raised?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. And if you look at it, even the advocacy of the ADC on behalf of El-Rufai is clearly below par. It's not even vibrant. And this is because there are real allegations against the man. And that's the point. I mean, nobody can deny the fact that El-Rufai has cases to answer. You know, I think that there's a fair consensus about that. You know, not only about, you know, corruption allegations, but even, you know, abuse of power and abuse of public trust. You know, clearly, you know, to that extent, it's not political. But it is political in the sense that where people are taking advantage of all of those things to kind of punish him. And we are told that he's not responding to questions and he wants to go to court. Please take him to court. Put this thing out in the open and let's see, you know, let the chips fall where they may.
All right, we'll anchor at that point. Thank you for coming on, Laolu Akande, the host of Inside Sources and former presidential aide. Yeah.